LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the December 18th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the best dozen clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. You can see the two subtopics I'm covering down listed in the video description. If you're watching as a recorded show, you can click between the two subjects using time indexes. Whether you're watching as a recorded show or as a live show, I put my clip list of the dozen clips down there. 11 of the 12 are all on the issue of Russia hacking the election, or at least the election campaigns, and whether the newest reports that now not just the CIA but also the FBI believes that Russia hacked the election and that it was at the highest levels of the Russian government, and they did it for the purpose of helping Donald Trump, not not hacking the actual ballots, but hacking, emails and giving out information, trying to sway the election one way or the other. That's the main topic. Then at the end, I'll have a quick clip and some quick discussion of the Electoral College, since the Electoral College is actually meeting tomorrow to make Donald Trump the president-elect. We've been calling him the president-elect, but he'll be the actual president-elect tomorrow after the Electoral College gives him the, and then it'll actually be legalized by the Senate, but the Electoral College votes tomorrow, so I'll discuss that at the end. But I want to start with some political comedy, as I like to do. Alec Baldwin was back on Saturday Night Live last night being the Donald Trump parody, and then they had Bennet on to do one surprise character. I'm not going to show you all the surprises from the cold open. Down in the video description, you can also see a link to the full cold open free on YouTube, on the Saturday Night Live YouTube channel. This is this is my favorite 2 minutes from the cold open. Donald Trump and his surprise guest talking about the main topic of the broadcast for my live stream, and we'll talk about it after we watch it together here.
Kellyanne, let's take a break, but stay close by, would you?
Okay, don't worry. I'm handcuffed to you for all of history. So.
What's that sound?
I think it's coming from the chimney.
Is it a ghost? Am I being Scrooged? I hate that.
Oh,
Scrooged?
Oh, Donald, I think it's...
Vladimir, this is such a great surprise.
What are you doing here?
I was just in town, hiding in the walls.
Well, come in. It's so great to finally get a chance to talk in person. I composed an email to you, but I haven't even sent it yet.
I know. Mr. Trump, I'm here because your CIA is saying that we Russians tried to make you win elections.
I know, all lies made up by some very bitter people who need to move on.
So you trust me more than American CIA?
All I know is I won.
Wow, this guy is blowing my mind. Donald, I want to state officially that we in Russia are so happy that you are U.S. president.
Oh, thank you.
We think you are the best candidate.
Sure.
The smartest candidate.
No doubt.
The Manchurian candidate.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds tremendous.
And since it is Christmas, after all, I got you a gift. This is Elf on the Shelf. It's fun. You just put it right here next to your internet router. Yeah, and you keep it there all year. It's fun, yes?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Vladimir, I'm sorry, but I didn't know you were coming, so I do not have a gift for you.
Please, Mr. Trump, you are the gift.
Yeah, please, Mr. Trump, you are the gift. That's my favorite line of the cold open. But there's actually another surprise guest who comes out later that if you want to watch the whole video yourself, I put a link down in the video description. And I actually think that Bennett's Vladimir Putin impression, who knows? It's not like I know what Vladimir Putin really sounds like, but he gave sort of like that creepy, no better than, like puppet master. No, you're the puppet master. No, I don't know. But I still think that Alec Baldwin's Donald Trump impression has kind of gone downhill from the first one or two times. Especially the first time he did it, I thought it was better. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section, but beyond criticizing the cold open of Saturday Night Live, I actually want to get to the real news that occurred about this Russian hacking of the election, or at least Russia trying to sway our election by hacking into different campaigns and giving out the emails of John Podesta and other members of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. And first I'm going to show you two different news reports on that, the ABC report and the NBC report. I actually thought the ABC report was a little better. Instead of having like an introduction and an exit narration by the anchor with like a video package in the middle, which is what you'll see on NBC's Meet the Press from Chuck Todd in a minute. Here, Martha Raddatz on ABC's This Week. She's the co-host of ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. I don't know why her name's not in the title, but she actually talks to two of the ABC reporters, Brian Ross and Tom Llamas, and they give, Brian Ross is like the intelligence or justice, I can't remember his actual title or his specific title, but something about the Justice Department reporter or something like that. And then Tom Llamas is reporting from Donald Trump's campaign, and they give like the breaking news about what we now, or what the news reports are telling us is the CIA and FBI assessments of what Russia did, which you can decide for yourself if you believe news reports of what the CIA and FBI are now saying. And then Tom Llamas reports that Donald Trump is not really ready to say that he necessarily believes them, and I'll discuss all that after we watch this 4-minute news report from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning here.
A nightmare for American democracy. The nation's intelligence agencies, the White House, claiming the worst, that Russia not only hacked campaign 2016, but tried to influence the outcome of the election, and that the hacks were directed from the heart of the Kremlin, the office of President Vladimir Putin himself. It is extraordinary to contemplate. Among the pressing questions this morning, does Trump even believe Russia was behind the hack? Can the country unify? How will America respond? And with a little over a month from President-elect Trump's inauguration, was his victory due in part to Putin's audacious plot? At President Obama's final news conference of the year, he left no doubt the Kremlin's fingerprints were all over election 2016. Just to be clear, do you believe Vladimir Putin himself authorized the hack, and do you believe he authorized that to help Donald Trump?
We have said, and I will confirm, that this happened at the highest levels of the Russian government, and I will let you make that determination as to whether there are high-level Russian officials who go off rogue and decide to tamper with the U.S. election process without Vladimir Putin knowing about it.
So let's get right to our reporters, Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross and Tom Llamas outside Trump Tower. And Brian, let me start with you. We've heard what the president said. How solid is the intelligence?
Well, Martha, U.S. officials tell ABC News the evidence is compelling and, if anything, getting stronger. The cybersecurity detectives who have analyzed the bugs or the malware planted in the Democratic Party computers say it transmitted the stolen emails to an internet address the Russians had used in earlier hacks of other countries, and that the software was actually created in a Russian time zone with gaps during Russian holidays, all on a keyboard with Russian Cyrillic characters. And on top of that, Martha, the CIA has now shared with other agencies highly classified new information gained from the Kremlin itself that authorities say reveals the hands-on role of Vladimir Putin and his intent to hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump, Martha.
And Tom Llamas, I would assume that Donald Trump has been briefed. Why doesn't he believe this?
Martha, that's a complicated question. I'm told by sources within the transition team that if the intelligence community feels that the president-elect should have that information about the Russia hacking, they have the opportunity nearly every day to provide it in the presidential daily briefing. Now, has that happened? It's unclear because that's all classified material. I do know the president-elect is fully aware of the news reports of what President Obama said, but there is some pushback from Team Trump because they say if the evidence is so definitive, if it's so black and white, why has a public? Why has a smoking gun not been made public? Why has there not been a linkage chart that has been leaked to the public so people could actually see that evidence? And also, behind all of this, they think all of this reporting and all this time spent on this issue is also an attempt to undermine their election victory, which they say they rightly and legally won on election night. Martha?
And Brian, I want to go back to the hack and the response. The president said there will be a response. He said to send a clear message to Russia or others not to do this to us because we can do stuff to you. What kind of stuff is he talking about?
Well, Martha, there are a number of options, but none seem to fit the bill precisely. Covert action could result in a cyber tit-for-tat that could escalate and would be more damaging to the U.S. than to Russia. The FBI is investigating whether it could bring criminal charges against Putin or anyone else involved, including any Americans. But for the Russians, that would be little more than a symbolic gesture. Officials are also looking at exposing or somehow freezing the secret bank accounts of Putin and those around him. And finally, there is the option of a new round of financial sanctions, which the president could order in the final weeks of the Obama administration, Martha.
And in Tom, Donald Trump...
So I thought that was a really good rundown of possible responses to the cyber attack from the Obama administration, from Brian Ross there. And I thought the ABC report that you just watched had the best roundup of the breaking news, or, you know, what the intelligence agencies are saying now. It was a little bit leaner on the response from the Trump administration, or the incoming Trump administration, but I'm going to cover that pretty extensively with clips from Kellyanne Conway and Reince Priebus in a little bit. But before I get to that, I want to show, and that'll be the next couple clips after this next NBC Meet the Press clip, which is Chuck Todd's introduction of the same material you just saw ABC cover, and then Chuck Todd's video package that shows a better roundup, not so much of the breaking news, but of the reaction from Obama's press conference, and then from Congress, and from the Trump campaign, or the incoming Trump administration, I should say, and even from the media. And I'll discuss that with you after you watch that 3.5-minute clip together here.
Obama's news conference was dominated by questions about Russia. Mr. Obama avoided weighing in on what impact Russia's hacking had on the election, and he tried to explain why his public response to Russia's interference has been restrained.
I wanted to make sure that everybody understood we were playing this thing straight, that we weren't trying to advantage one side or another.
At what may have been his final news conference, President Obama defended his administration's muted response to Russia's interference in the election.
Part of the goal here was to make sure that we did not do the work of the leakers for them by raising more and more questions about the integrity of the election right before the election was taking place, at a time, by the way, when the president-elect himself was raising questions.
Hillary Clinton blamed FBI Director James Comey for her loss at a party for donors on Thursday night.
I happen to believe this, that that letter most likely made the difference in the outcome.
And Clinton's campaign chair John Podesta called the FBI response to the DNC hacking baffling, writing, "No one at the FBI could be bothered to drive 10 minutes to raise the alarm." But the president and his attorney general are defending the FBI.
The investigation isn't even over, so I think it's impossible to characterize it in any one way or the other. I don't know where Mr. Podesta is obtaining information.
At that Thursday night event, Clinton also blamed Vladimir Putin for her defeat.
We're also learning more every day about the unprecedented Russian plot to swing this election.
But the president refused to say he's the reason she lost, though he did all but confirm an NBC News story that the Russian president personally approved the cyber attacks.
Not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin.
While President Obama only had veiled criticism for Trump, he was less reluctant to blame the press.
I'm finding it a little curious that everybody's suddenly acting surprised that this looked like it was disadvantaging Hillary Clinton, because you guys wrote about it every day. Every single leak.
Some Democrats are frustrated the president did not act more aggressively in the fall.
It was really from being even more declaratory in terms of what the intelligence showed. I do think it was a mistake.
Meanwhile, Trump is ignoring the fact that the FBI and the Director of National Intelligence now agree with a CIA assessment that Russia intervened in the election to help Trump win. Last week, he totally rejected that intelligence.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just another excuse. I don't believe it.
And on Friday, Team Trump brought up an issue that has nothing to do with Putin and the Russians.
This wouldn't have happened if Hillary Clinton didn't have a secret server.
It's worth noting, by the way, that the Russians did not hack Hillary Clinton's home server. One other thing, President Obama made it clear on Friday that he's considering a number of actions in response to the Russian hacking that, in his words, could increase the costs for them. But do the Russians care about that threat? Remember, the president also confirmed something else on Friday, that in September at the G20 summit in China, he personally told Putin to cut it out. It was a month later, on October 7th, that WikiLeaks began publishing the first of some 50,000 emails from Clinton campaign co-chairman John Podesta. And since President Obama...
So that's the NBC report, and they report kind of at the end there that President Obama, in his news conference, was talking about how he told Putin to cut it out in terms of the hacking, and I'm going to show that clip a little later. That was something that became controversial amongst the Democrats, and especially John Podesta here had big criticisms of the FBI. You saw that in the NBC report, which even though I criticized NBC in that report for not having as much of the breaking news, they did have more of a roundup of the different reactions, including, I forgot to mention, the reaction of Hillary Clinton's campaign, and I'll show a little more of that later. But first I want to show this clip of John Podesta actually making some breaking news on NBC's Meet the Press after criticizing NBC for not having as much breaking news in their news report there. Here John Podesta, in response to a question from Chuck Todd on this morning's Meet the Press, says that he has only been contacted one time by the FBI. It was, I think, on October 9th was the first and last time he's ever been contacted by the FBI about the hacking of his emails, which is, I don't know, is a little bit incredible if you think about it, but I'll discuss it with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Account that was hacked. I gotta think you're getting updates on the investigation that others would not. What can you share?
I will share this with you, Chuck. The first time I was contacted by the FBI was 2 days after WikiLeaks started dropping my emails.
Let me pause here.
The first
2 days after.
2 days after. So October 7th, October 7th. Let's go through the chronology. Yes. On October 7th, the Access Hollywood tape comes out. 1 hour later, WikiLeaks starts dropping my emails into the public. One could say that there might have, those things might not have been a coincidence.
Okay.
2 days later, the FBI contacted me, and the first thing the agent said to me was, I don't know if you're aware, but your email account might have been hacked.
When did
I said
you
yes.
know?
Yeah, I said yes. I was aware of that.
But when were you aware that you had been hacked?
I think I was. It was confirmed on October 7th in some of the DNC dumps that had occurred earlier, and other campaign officials also had their emails divulged earlier than October 7th. But in one of those DNC dumps, there was a document that appeared to me might have come from my account. So I wasn't sure. I didn't know what they had, what they didn't have. It wasn't until October 7th when Assange really in his first statements said things that were incorrect, but started dumping them out and said they were going to all dump out. That's when I knew that they had the contents of my email account.
When history's written about this election.
By the way, that was the last time I talked to the FBI.
You asked me. You have still not heard from the FBI since?
You asked me when. Yeah. How am I getting additional briefings? That was the first and last time I talked.
So October 9th is the last time you've heard from the FBI at all.
Yes.
You have not got an update on the investigation to your personal email.
That is correct.
Do you expect to get a phone call before the end of the year?
Maybe before the end of the show.
Let me ask you: when the history of this election is written.
So, like, John Podesta seemed to be using Meet the Press there to send a message to the FBI that they were not doing their job in terms of contacting him and giving him updates about the hacking of his personal emails. And Donna Brazille also, she's the acting head of the Democratic National Committee, and she also, as the acting head of the Democratic National Committee since Debbie Wasserman Schultz was booted out because of some of the hacked emails. Well, Donna Brazille contradicted President Obama, but wouldn't actually say she was disappointed in Obama, but she did say she was disappointed in the FBI, talking to Martha Raddatz over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, responding to this idea that I talked about at the end of the NBC Meet the Press news report, where they talked about how President Obama had said he told Putin to cut it out in September, and after that there was no more Russian hacking. Well, Donna Brazille definitely disagreed with that, although she wouldn't attack President Obama specifically, but I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together here.
President Obama also said Friday that the cyber attacks stopped after he warned Putin at an international conference in September. You've been briefed on the party's computer system. Is that right? They stopped?
No, they did not stop. They came after us absolutely every day until the end of the election. They tried to hack into our system repeatedly. We put up the very best cyber security, what I call infrastructure to stop them, but they constantly.
So why do you think the president would say that?
Look, I think the president is right to call for a full investigation. Every federal agency involved should put everything on the table, and the Democratic Party will put everything on the table. They came after us daily, hourly. And there were times when we thought they would penetrate us and we would have another breach. But we had a great...
Do you think the president didn't know they were continuing? You said they were continuing.
You know, when I saw the president, I was a little disappointed that, you know, we were under constant attack. We never felt comfortable. We didn't know what was coming next. And, you know, this is not just about computers. This is harassment of individuals, is harassment of our candidates, harassment of our donors. We had stolen information, personal information. People were personally harassed.
So are you disappointed in the president's response?
I am disappointed that we went through this process. The country went through this process.
But are you disappointed in his response?
You know, Martha, I don't personally, we were attacked by a foreign adversary. And I think it's the responsibility of the government to help individual citizens as well as institutions, nonprofits, corporations to protect us, to help protect us.
So how do you think the FBI should have handled it? The New York Times reported this week that the FBI reached out to the DNC starting in September 2015. Some of the calls weren't even...
It's like going to Best Buy and you get the Geek Squad, and they're great people, by the way. They reached out to our IT vendors. But when they reached us, meaning senior Democratic officials, by then it was, you know, the Russians had been involved for a long time. Look, we had two sitting members of Congress, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Tulsi Gabbard. They are sitting members of Congress. Tulsi sits on the armed services. They could have easily have reached them.
Well, do you bear any responsibility?
So there's Donna Brazille contradicting the President of the United States, saying that after President Obama told Vladimir Putin to cut it out back in September at the G8 conference or whatever it was, Russia still continued to try to hack the DNC every single day up until the election, according to Donna Brazille. So I guess Vladimir Putin did not cut it out. And having just shown John Podesta's criticism of the FBI and Donna Brazille's criticism of the FBI, I wanted to show this clip of an interview that Jake Tapper did on CNN's State of the Union with Attorney General Loretta Lynch. She is, of course, the head of the Justice Department, which means she's the boss of the FBI, and she defended the FBI against these attacks. Not the clips I just showed, but what John Podesta said was also detailed in this long New York Times article that Jake Tapper refers to. And she is definitely saying that that's just their opinion and the FBI did a great job, but she can't comment on it because it's an ongoing investigation. And she specifically defends against the attack that they put a lot more effort into investigating Hillary Clinton's emails than this foreign government's attack on the U.S. election. But I'll talk about it a little more after we watch that Little under 4-minute clip from CNN's State of the Union this morning here.
In the Washington Post by the Clinton campaign manager John Podesta. He said he's, quote, surprised to read in the New York Times that when the FBI discovered the Russian attack in September 2015, it failed to send even a single agent to warn senior DNC officials. Instead, messages were left with the DNC IT help desk. Is that accurate? Is that an accurate description of the outreach that the FBI did to the DNC? And if so, is that sufficient?
So as we've talked about earlier this year, the investigation into the hacks of the DNC and the DCCC is an ongoing investigation. It's an active investigation. So I'm not able to comment on the specifics of how people were contacted. But I can say that the FBI has worked closely with those organizations, both to discuss what we've learned about the hacks, to gather information about them, so that we can continue this investigation.
Whether or not you can get into specifics, is it true that there was this level of calling the DNC that doesn't sound particularly competent or doesn't sound like it had the urgency that one would think? Is that basic description that Podesta makes, is it accurate?
Well, what I can tell you is that this investigation was taken seriously from the beginning. This is an incredibly serious issue. I can't comment on Mr. Podesta's sources or where he gets his information or why he has that view, but what I can say is that he's not involved in the ongoing investigation, so he wouldn't be privy to everything that would have been done or said to that. But as I said, you know, he's entitled to his opinion. But
But he's not entitled to his facts, and that's what I'm wondering about, is if his facts are accurate, because he says he finds it, quote, downright infuriating at, quote, nearly the exact same time that no one at the FBI could be bothered to drive 10 minutes to the DNC, 2 agents accompanied by attorneys from the Justice Department were in Denver visiting a tech firm that had helped maintain Hillary Clinton's email server. He is suggesting without question that Hillary Clinton's email server got more attention from the Justice Department and the FBI than this hack investigation by Russia, which I think it's fair to say seems fairly serious.
Well, that's an ongoing investigation, so I would say it's been taken very seriously.
Did the Clinton email investigation get more attention than the hacks?
You know, you can't characterize it, and I don't think that it is going to be helpful to try and draw equivalencies to any investigation with others to say, and therefore it means that one was more or less important, because as I said, one is resolved right now, one is finished, and one is very active and very ongoing. So there you see a great deal of activity still continuing.
I know you can't comment on the active investigation, but let me just put it this way. John Podesta is out there trashing the FBI. And he's saying that the investigation into the hacks at the DNC was substandard. I mean, that's clearly what he's saying. Do you agree with that characterization?
I don't. First of all, the investigation isn't even over, so I think it's impossible to characterize it in any one way or the other. You know, again, I don't know where Mr. Podesta is obtaining information.
He said the New York Times. There's a big, long New York Times story that I'm sure you read.
So, and I know also because of his involvement with the campaign, he's going to have a certain interest in this and a certain view of that. And so, I allow him his opinion. Everyone has a great deal of respect for him, so I allow him that opinion, but I disagree with that if that is in fact the characterization he's trying to make. I think you've got to look at every investigation separately, you've got to look at every case separately, and you've got to allow for the fact that the way in which someone may be contacted isn't indicative of the full relationship that they develop or the response that they may have gotten initially from that organization as well.
Coming up, the Attorney General.
So there's the Attorney General's response to the attacks on the FBI investigation of Russian hacking from John Podesta especially, and you kind of saw Donna Brazille back up what John Podesta said, and that last part of what Loretta Lynch told Jake Tapper was not a good response to John Podesta's latest claims that I showed from NBC's Meet the Press, where he said the first and last time he was contacted by the FBI was October 9th, even though he is a personal victim. His personal email was apparently hacked by the Russians, although in a minute I'll show Republican representative from New York, Peter King, disputing that, but that will actually be part of the Republicans versus Republicans part that I'm about to start of the Russian hacking. I just showed the Democrats versus the Democrats. You saw John Podesta and Donna Brazille versus Attorney General Loretta Lynch from the Obama administration. Now I'm going to show Kellyanne Conway and Reince Priebus show the way they are, as much as possible, rejecting the idea that Russia hacked the election or tried to throw the election in favor of Donald Trump. And then I'll contrast that with what Senator John McCain says, where he is also not a fan of President Obama, but doesn't really buy what you're going to hear from Kellyanne Conway and Reince Priebus. And then I'll show a couple members, a Democrat and a Republican member of the House of Representatives, to finish up the topic. But first, here's Kellyanne Conway kind of doing what I showed last week from Reince Priebus, going really hard against the idea that Russia hacked the election, or at least had anything to do with the outcome of the election, and trying to change the subject as much as possible. And it starts with this interesting theory from John Dickerson on CBS's Face the Nation, where he's basically saying that Donald Trump is waiting until after the Electoral College votes for him tomorrow and makes him the official president-elect, and then he'll be more amenable to talking about the possibility of Russian hacking. And I'll discuss that with you after we watch it together over here.
About a theory I've gotten from some Republican officials this week. This is their theory. Once Donald Trump clears the Electoral College vote on Monday, he'll drop his skepticism that Russia was involved in hacking the election. What do you make of that theory?
The entire nonsense about the electors trying to use the Russian hacking issue to change the election results is really unfortunate. I think that actually undermines our democracy more than any other conversation that we're having right now. We were really struck by what seems to be disagreement and consternation between the President Obama camp and the Hillary Clinton camps this week. You have Josh Earnest doing remarkable things from the podium of the White House press secretary, basically telling us all what Donald Trump obviously knew when he would have no way of knowing that, and it's frankly disrespectful. And then you have his own president, President Obama, in his final press conference, refusing to go all the way here and say that Russia had hacked into emails that went ahead and interfered with the election or shifted the election results. President Obama knows how to win the presidency. He did it twice, and he did it with states like Michigan, which he won by 10 points, which we just won. He did it by winning states like Wisconsin, which Hillary Clinton ignored.
Kellyanne, let me sorry to interrupt, but just on this question of Mr. Trump is still skeptical that the Russians were even involved. Leaving aside the question of whether it affected the election or not, you have the CIA, the FBI, the Director of National Intelligence, now a number of Republicans saying it's clear that the Russians hacked. That, just as a basic premise, is clear. Mr. Trump, since late September, has said that he doesn't think that's the case. He still says that now. What does he know that all those intelligence officers don't know?
John, where's the evidence? Why, when CIA officials were invited to a House intelligence briefing last week, did they refuse to go? Instead, they're talking to the media. That undermines our national security, our intelligence operations.
But
Why
does he himself have
that?
evidence, Kellyanne, that suggests that this isn't the case?
Well, the president-elect receives intelligence briefings that I am not privy to. But let's focus on the issue at hand, which is if the CIA, if Director Brennan and others at the top are serious about turning over evidence to we the American people, they should do that. And they should show up when the House Intelligence Committee invites them to brief them. But, you know, that's a closed-door meeting, so it's not so exciting and tantalizing because then you can't leak it to the media. They should not be leaking to the media. If there's evidence, let's see it. I would note that President Obama himself the other day stopped short of saying what many pundits on TV are saying, and they would have no idea because I'm fairly sure they don't get intelligence briefings. I'll tell you what the unintelligence briefing we all know is, which is that Hillary Clinton and her team spent $1.2 billion, lost an election they should have won, didn't see us coming, and got a lot of help, frankly, from people in the media who are still trying to fight the last war.
I guess what I'm trying
is over. This man is the president.
Absolutely, and much more to the point, he's going to be the president. So what we're trying to do is figure out how does the president-elect take in new information that's interesting, that's volatile, that's at the center of national security here. So on the one hand, you have the entire intelligence community that says the Russians were hacking the election, again, leaving aside the question of whether it had an effect. And then you have the president-elect totally dismissing that. So I wonder, does his entire team have the same view that there is no merit to the idea that the Russians were involved?
But remember, you just said the word election. I have to push back because that's what everybody's doing. They're conflating whether Russia hacked into the emails and how it affected the election. I see in every paragraph in every story, I listen to people who don't know what they're talking about on TV and frankly are never under oath. We're listening to the White House press secretary himself make these allegations. Hillary Clinton is telling her donors that. And I've talked to some of those donors and they don't believe it. They were given all those fancy maps and graphics that assured them Hillary Clinton would win in the blowout. They don't accept it. Look, I also want to I want to say something else. I listened to Donna Brazille on a different network this morning, and I very much appreciated the fact she seems to be pushing back against President Obama and this idea that after President Obama, as he clearly stated in his final press conference on Friday, John, he said, I told Vladimir Putin to cut it out, and he did. The hacking stopped. It seems like she was in disagreement with that. It seems like people in the Democratic Party wanted the president to go farther and want him to go further now. And that, I guess that's his right. We'll see what he does in the next couple of weeks.
All right, we're not going to get any insight into the president-elect's thinking here, but let me try this. Did anyone involved in the Trump campaign have any contact with Russians trying to meddle with the election?
Absolutely not. And I discussed that with the president-elect just last night. Those conversations never happened. I hear people saying it like it's a fact on television. That is just not only inaccurate and false, but it's dangerous.
Does the president-elect...
And it does undermine our democracy.
Does the president-elect approve of President Obama's decision to retaliate against him?
So there you can see the Kellyanne Conway response to the whole Russian hacking thing. And she basically tried to change the subject and attack Hillary Clinton, and I thought it was kind of amusing. That's the one Kellyanne Conway clip I have for you all. But the one thing she tried to say is that the Democrats are trying to use this to delegitimize Donald Trump's election, and there's definitely some truth to that. And I was reading your live comments along the way, and I noticed this one comment from... import this here real quick from Montague Magruder. Saying Trump's election wasn't fair and we need a do-over. Well, I don't think that's really going to happen, and I think that plays into what Kellyanne Conway was saying, where she's not really looking at Donald Trump's refusal to accept the idea that Russia tried to hack our elections and to be able to pawn it off on people who are saying we need a do-over, and I don't think that's going to happen. But we do need an investigation, and I think the Trump campaign is not doing enough to really go in that direction. Maybe it's what John Dickerson was saying in his introduction to that question there, or his setup, where he said maybe Donald Trump's waiting till after he's really the president-elect based on the Electoral College vote tomorrow, because, you know, some of the electors have been saying, the Democratic electors and I think one Republican elector, saying they want some briefing on the Russian hacking before they vote tomorrow, which apparently is not going to happen. And if you want to see Reince Priebus sort of follow up on what he did with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press last time, this is his interview on Fox News Sunday, where Chris Wallace does do a good job of pointing out that all the intelligence agencies are saying Russia was involved in the hacking, but Donald Trump doesn't seem to want to admit that that's the conclusion of all the intelligence agencies. But of course, he definitely buys into what Kellyanne Conway and Reince Priebus are saying here, that there's no possibility that it swung the election in any way, even though the election was only decided by like 80,000 votes in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. But I'll talk about that a little more after you watch this Fox News Sunday clip between Chris Wallace and Reince Priebus about the Russian hacking here.
Told me last weekend that the CIA conclusion that Russia interfered with the election to help him was, quote, ridiculous, and it could have been some guy in a basement. Well, now the CIA director, John Brennan, says he's met with the director of national intelligence and the head of the FBI, and, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference. Question, does the president-elect accept the consensus of the intel community?
Well, I think a lot of these things, though, Chris, are coming through third parties. I mean, we haven't heard from Comey. When Clapper...
Yeah, this is CIA Director Brennan. You think he's lying about what Jim Comey thinks?
No, I don't think he is, but it sure would be nice to hear from everybody. I mean, if there is this conclusive opinion among all of these intelligence agencies, then they should issue a report or they should stand in front of a camera and make the case. But that all being said, let's put that aside for a second. I think the real question is why the Democrats and why these electors and why MoveOn.org and all of these organizations are doing everything they can to delegitimize the outcome of the election. I mean, they started out with a recount in states that they didn't move the dial in anywhere. In fact, President-elect Trump received more votes when that was done. Then they went after this Diebold fiasco, which was proven to be totally untrue. Now they're demanding intelligence reports. Right, now they're going forward with this attempt to intimidate and harass electors. I mean, we've got electors that are receiving 200,000 emails. But nothing is going to change.
But Reince, I'm going to get to that on the electors. I'm asking you a simple question. Does the president-elect accept the consensus, and that's what John Brennan said it was, the consensus of the intel community about Russian interference and its intent?
I think he would accept the conclusion if these intelligence professionals would get together, put out a report, show the American people that they're actually on the same page, as opposed to third parties through the Washington Post.
This wasn't a third party.
Right,
this
but
John
we haven't
Brennan
heard from Clapper. But we haven't heard from Comey. I mean, so look, I think that these guys should be straight with the American people and come out and say it. I don't think they've been clear about it. I think that it's been all over the map.
So John Brennan, his statement is not enough for you?
Not when you have multiple people saying different things coming through third parties and media reports. But that all being said, let's put it aside. Let's assume it's true. There's no evidence that shows that the outcome of the election was changed because of a couple dozen John Podesta emails that were out there across. I would propose to you.
I agree with that, and that's fair. But I'm asking you about the specific question of Russian intelligence. Here's what President Obama said in his news conference on Friday. Take a look.
Unless the American people genuinely think that the professionals in the CIA, the FBI, are less trustworthy than the Russians, then people should pay attention to what our intelligence agencies say.
And that's really the question I'm focusing on. We'll get to the electors in a minute and what the Democrats are trying to do. Does President Trump accept or trust the intelligence community? This is the CIA director saying this, not a third party. Or does he trust the Russian denials?
Look, I think that they're almost there, except for the fact that they haven't been totally upfront and transparent in their opinion as to who, what, where, and how this all happened. And I think they'll get there. And when they do, we can hear from the president-elect and get his opinion. But the reality of all of this, and all of these players that are spinning these reports, are doing it for a political purpose, which is to delegitimize the outcome of the election.
Do you think John Brennan, the CIA director?
But I think when these things were leaked last week with no, in the Washington Post and the New York Times, they were leaked by people within the intelligence communities to these newspapers or through some third-party source, is not appropriate. And then people like us have to answer to these third parties about something that all of these intelligence agencies have not made 100% clear as to what's happening.
You may say that this falls in that area.
LiberalViewer presents.
Cued the wrong clip there. I've been trying to get the stream to work. There's some live stream problem. Sorry about that. But that was Reince Priebus explaining how the incoming Trump administration is trying to obfuscate and deny as much as possible the connection between Russia and this hacking, even though all these intelligence agencies are coming more and more to the conclusion that it was Russian hacking and that basically the Putin government was responsible and did it for the purpose of swaying the election as much as possible toward the Trump campaign. Of course, Kellyanne Conway and Reince Priebus are also trying to say that it didn't change the outcome, and that's kind of hard to say, but I was reading some of the live comments along the way. I'm kind of sorry for all the live stream people who haven't been able to watch the show without all sorts of freezing and stuff. But I noticed you were all asking for pictures of Sandy, so at the beginning of the show, so my dog Sandy. So I decided to call her in, and here's the quick picture I took of her for you all. So there's Sandy for people who are asking for Sandy, but I want to show one more clip of Reince Priebus, where this is sort of the transition to the congressional response to the Russian hacking. And this is where Reince Priebus is asked about the response from John McCain and Lindsey Graham, who have some concerns about the Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, or Exxon, who has had who was given like a Medal of Friendship by Vladimir Putin. And that's actually something you can see parodied on the Saturday Night Live Cold Open that I put a link to down in the video description, with a special surprise guest as Rex Tillerson. But here's Reince Priebus talking about whether Congress is going to give the Trump administration problems confirming Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State because of the concerns of John McCain and Lindsey Graham over in this clip.
Nomination of ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson to be Secretary of State. Some Republican senators are concerned about his ties to Russian President Putin. Here they are.
When he gets the Friendship Award from a butcher, frankly, it's an issue that I think needs to be examined.
So my question, Mr. Tillerson, do you realize what Russia's up to here and all over the world, and are you willing to do something about it?
If those two Republicans vote against Tillerson, his nomination hangs by a single vote.
Right, and we've been working with Senator McCain and Senator Graham, Senator Rubio in Florida. We feel really confident about where we're at, and obviously getting Secretary Baker, Condoleezza Rice, Bob Gates, and so many others on board has been a real benefit. And, you know, look, this is a tough world, and I think that, you know, having relationships with people in difficult places is only a positive for Rex Tillerson. And, you know, the good Lord didn't put oil in all freedom, democracy, loving countries. And as being an executive of ExxonMobil, he had to go there and have these relationships. I think that's a total positive and win for our country and President-elect Trump.
You're still confident that Tillerson will get through?
Totally confident, 100% confident.
Okay, now that was a good lightning round answer.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to type in a comment. I think I messed up the comment for the live viewers, and I didn't quite get back from the clip as quick as possible. But you saw there Reince Priebus saying that he's not worried about John McCain and Lindsey Graham on Rex Tillerson. And then the next clip I want to show is actually a clip of John McCain talking to Jake Tapper over on CNN's State of the Union, where he actually leads with the clip from President Obama's news conference on Friday, where Obama said that he told Vladimir Putin to cut it out in terms of hacking the U.S. election. And John McCain, you'll see, makes a very sarcastic comment about that, and refuses really to attack Donald Trump, but does a lot of attacking of President Obama in his policy on Russia, and also attacking Russia and Putin. And I'll discuss that with you after we watch that clip from CNN's State of the Union this morning over here.
Obama on Friday defended his response to the Russia hack during a press conference. Take a listen.
In early September, when I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out, and there were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
What do you think of the president's response, and how do you think the U.S. needs to respond going forward?
Well, the president's response was sort of an acknowledgement that and endorsement of what they've already done. The president has no strategy and no policy as to what to do about these various cyber attacks that have possibly disrupted an American election. We need a select committee We need to get to the bottom of this. We need to find out exactly what was done and what the implications of the attacks were, especially if they had an effect on our election. There's no doubt they were interfering, and no doubt it was a cyber attacks. The question now is how much and what damage and what should the United States of America do? And so far, we've been totally paralyzed. I'm sure that when Vladimir Putin was told, cut it out, unquote, I'm sure that Vladimir Putin immediately stopped all cyber activity. The fact is, they are hacking every single day in other areas of our military and all kinds of different aspects of American life that they're able to penetrate. And we have no strategy, nor do we have any policy towards that, and it's very disturbing.
But just to underline what you said, you're calling for a select committee, joint House and Senate, to investigate what exactly happened with the Russian hack. Let me ask you, you're being critical of President Obama's posture towards Russia, but President-elect Trump seems to have a friendly posture towards Russia, one that must upset you given the fact that you've long been suspicious of Vladimir Putin. When President-elect Trump called you to discuss the nomination of General Mattis for Secretary of Defense, which will obviously go through your committee, did you raise your concerns about Russia to him?
No, because it was a brief conversation, and he mentioned that he was that General Mattis was going to be his nominee. There was not a conversation. But look, Jake, what's happening here? When we see the seizure of these ships, when we see the cyber attacks, when we see the dismemberment of Syria, when we see the tragedies that are taking place there, which are heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, while we sat by and watched all this happen, this is the sign of a possible unraveling of the world order that was established after World War II, which has made one of the most peaceful periods in the history of the world. We're starting to see that, the strains and the unraveling of it, and that is because of an absolute failure of American leadership. When America doesn't lead, a lot of other bad people do, and that's why we're seeing this slaughter in Aleppo that breaks your heart.
I understand that you're critical of President.
So there you see Senator John McCain, Republican, refusing to attack Donald Trump for his closeness to Vladimir Putin, and instead talking all about how it's President Obama's fault and attacking the Obama administration's policy towards Putin and Syria, and talking about all the people who are dying there, which definitely is a problem, but I think I would blame it more on George W. Bush and the people who are too hawkish. You know, John McCain was pretty hawkish on invading Iraq and going after Saddam Hussein. He voted for that war, and I think that's more the original cause of why Syria has been destabilized, not so much what President Obama did, but that's kind of a longer discussion on a whole different topic. But I wanted to show that clip to show that even Senator John McCain, who is vociferously anti-Russian, is fairly reticent about attacking Donald Trump in terms of his closeness to Vladimir Putin and Russia. And the same is true over on the House of Representatives side, where I'm going to show a Republican and a Democrat for the penultimate clip of the broadcast tonight. This is from This Week with George Stephanopoulos. You'll see an introduction from Martha Raddatz talking about how Democrats and Republicans are reacting differently to the possibility of Russian hacking, and it's a clip of Democrat Adam Schiff, who I showed last week, giving the case for why Russian hacking is a real problem and why Russian hacking is actually with the motivation to throw the election towards Donald Trump. Whether or not it actually had that effect or not, that's something else. But then you'll also see New York Representative Peter King, who is pretty dishonest from clips I've shown in the past. I made a whole video about how he made up this idea that Al-Qaeda tried to knock over Fort Knox, and it's this whole like made-up idea. I didn't have a chance to put that in the video description for the live show, but for the recorded show, I'll put a link down in the video description. You can see my video about how Peter King made up this whole story about Al-Qaeda trying to attack Fort Knox when there's no real evidence of it. Well, here he's really refusing to accept evidence that Russia tried to hack the election, hack John Podesta's emails is his big concern, that there's not enough evidence of that, and he's put up against Adam Schiff on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, co-hosted by Martha Raddatz, and I think actually this clip shows what Fox News always talks about being fair and balanced. This actually is a pretty fair and balanced clip, I think, between the Democratic perspective and the Republican perspective, as I will discuss with you after we watch that clip together here.
We all understand that Russia was behind this. There's nobody on our committee who's been briefed that thinks the Chinese were involved or some 400-pound person. No, this was a state actor, and that state actor was Russia.
We don't know that the Russians were involved with Podesta. General Clapper said that also. They're not certain where that came from.
So let's bring in those two congressmen you just saw. They both sit on the House Select Intelligence Committee, the ranking Democratic member Adam Schiff of California, and the former chair of the committee, Republican Peter King of New York. I want to get to Congress's role in investigating and responding to the hacks in a moment. But first, Congressman King, we heard you right there questioning whether Russia was behind the hack of Clinton campaign chair John Podesta. Why don't you buy the consensus of the intelligence community on that?
Because we haven't been shown that consensus. What we've been told all along is that it was virtually definite that the Russians did hack the Democratic National Committee. I'm willing to accept that. I have no reason not to. But as far as John Podesta, it was uncertain whether or not that could be directly traced to the Russians. And I haven't seen anything since then. And that's what infuriates me about this, Martha, is that we have John Brennan, supposedly John Brennan, leaking to the Washington Post, to a biased newspaper like the New York Times, findings and conclusions that he's not telling the Intelligence Committee. I mean, Chairman Nunes called the meeting last week, invited all of the intelligence community in. They refused to come. I find it shameful. It seems like, to me, there should be an investigation of what the Russians did, but also an investigation of John Brennan and the hit job he seems to be orchestrating against the president-elect.
So you think this is all political by John Brennan?
I think that certainly when he comes out and leaks to the newspapers that the entire intelligence community has concluded that the Russians were targeting Hillary Clinton and favoring Donald Trump, when we've never been told that before. Certainly Director Comey didn't tell us that. I've not heard that from Director Clapper. So if that is such a dramatic finding, such a dramatic conclusion, then what he should have done is gone before the entire Intelligence Committee, briefed us on it. If that's the case, I'll accept it. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying we've been given no evidence on it. When you have these stories mysteriously appearing in the newspaper, when we've been told the opposite, or either the opposite or nothing at all on it, and then suddenly it appears right before the Electoral College is meeting, I find it shameful. And listen, I think Putin is evil. I think the Russians are guilty of incredibly evil hacking around the world. They're constantly trying to hack the United States. I'm not in any way defending Russia, but I'm saying this final conclusion about what he's saying about Trump and Clinton, if they have evidence, show it. They have not shown it yet. Okay. And Comey has told us that it's not the case in the past.
Okay, Congressman, I should say we don't know whether John Brennan is the one who leaked the information. Congressman Schiff, you have seen more intelligence. If Congressman King and others had seen all the intelligence, do you think they'd be convinced?
Look, I discussed this with Director Brennan very recently. I think he has done a remarkable job at the agency. I don't think he's trying to politicize this in any way. I do think there's a consensus among the top leadership in the intelligence community, not only of who was responsible, but why. And I think when the review is released by the administration within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think the American people will see that. But let's look at what's undisputed.
But why not give some of this information? I totally understand you don't want to have sources and methods out there, but can't you give the public something more substantial than what we've seen?
Well, yes, and I think the administration will, and I think they should. I've certainly been urging them to do that. But the principal reason why they haven't thus far is exactly the one you mentioned, and that is We have good sources of information. We don't want to disclose those. I'm sure the Russians would love to know the source of information so they can take countermeasures to prevent us from being able to attribute other Russian malignant cyber activity in the future. And the administration shouldn't disclose that. And ultimately, this is why I think what the president-elect is doing is so damaging, because by attacking the intelligence community, basically it's going to make that much more difficult for the current president to make attribution, for the American people to understand what they really need to about Russian involvement in our elections. This was unprecedented, and for the president-elect to continue to give the Russians deniability is deeply damaging to the country.
And Congressman,
Okay, so that's the final clip of the Russian hacking topic I wanted to show you. I think Adam Schiff's reaction, you know, I'm a registered Democrat, so I'm obviously going to be more aligned with what Representative Adam Schiff said there than Peter King, but it seems like the Republicans are being dragged kicking and screaming to the conclusion that Russia is hacking the election, had hacked the election in favor of Donald Trump. Whether or not they actually threw the election in favor of Donald Trump is a whole different question, but they're doing their best to say everything they can to make it seem like that isn't what happened, or there are all sorts of other possibilities, or the evidence isn't conclusive, or you can let me know what you think about the different statements that I've shown on this topic. But I also, like I said, after having shown all those different clips on the Russian hacking topic, I want to show one more clip before I finish the program on the topic of the Electoral College voting tomorrow. Now, a whole bunch of Democrats who are electors in the Electoral College, along, I think, with one Republican from, is it Texas? I'm not sure, but have asked for an intelligence briefing about the Russian hacking before they vote, but apparently that's not going to happen. And I really don't think there's going to be any surprises tomorrow in the Electoral College vote. I know a lot of Democrats are hoping that 37 electors will defect and not vote for Donald Trump, but even if that happened, it would go to the Republican House of Representatives, and that wouldn't really change the outcome, so it's really just a big pipe dream. But before I talk about that a little more, I want to show a clip from Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, where Michael Che actually did kind of an interesting analysis of the possibility that the electors would vote for someone other than Donald Trump, and he actually seems to believe that would cause a civil war. I think that's a little extreme, although I'll talk about his analysis a little more after I show you the clip. And then I also wanted to show this Colin Jost joke about the difficulty that Donald Trump is having getting any sort of big stars to be the entertainment at the inauguration, which is anyway, I'll talk about all of that after you watch that last clip, the Saturday Night Live Weekend Update clip from last night, over here.
Electoral College is voting on Monday, and it would take 37 members to change their vote to cost Donald Trump the election. That's right, only 37 people stand in the way of Civil Wars Episode 2. The only thing scarier to me than Donald Trump becoming president is Donald Trump not being allowed to become president. Taking the presidency away from Donald Trump now is like giving a monkey a machine gun and then trying to wrestle it back from him. At this point, all we can do is just pray that he can't figure out how it works, gets bored, and just puts it down and walks away.
It was announced that at Trump's inauguration, the national anthem will be performed by Jackie Evancho, who finished in second place on America's Got Talent, though she somehow won America's Got Talent Electoral College.
I thought that last joke by Colin Jost was pretty funny. I hope I didn't ruin it by putting it over in the topic of the Electoral College, because that was kind of the punchline. But I tried to obfuscate that myself a little bit by the way I introduced it. But I don't know. Do you think that Michael Che was right in the first part of that clip where he said if the Electoral College actually voted against Donald Trump tomorrow, that there'd be a civil war in the United States? I mean, the Electoral College was actually created to put some sort of filter on the Democratic majority, that there'd be some wise group of electors. You know, you can look at the Constitution yourself if you want, and it's all based on this idea that it's a safety valve, that the democratic process, the popular vote, won't necessarily be the last word on who's going to be president, and maybe we shouldn't elect people who are elected by just the riffraff of the democracy. But anyway, that's and of course there's the whole idea of the slave states, but wanting to make sure that their population plus 3/5 of their slaves would give them electors in the Electoral College. And it's kind of ironic that that whole system to protect the slaveholders are now helping Donald Trump become president of the United States. But for those people who think that there might be some weird outcome tomorrow where the electors don't elect Donald Trump, I'm sorry. I think that's really a low probability outcome. But of course, I thought the election of Donald Trump himself was, that was a low probability outcome. So maybe you don't believe what I think, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow. And anyway, I hope you appreciate all the clips I picked out, the dozen clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows, plus the 2 clips from Saturday Night Live. And that's the last Saturday Night Live clip until January, I think it's 14th. And then Bill Maher will be back with more episodes of Real Time with Bill Maher the day Donald Trump will be inaugurated, January 20th. Until then, I guess I'll have to find the political comedy clips in somewhere in just the actual clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows. I will be broadcasting on Christmas Day next Sunday. There will be a Sunday live clip roundup, I promise you that. And I will also hopefully be uploading my long-awaited video, Is Economics Anti-Feminist? One of the reasons I haven't made that video, and I'll be uploading a draft version for my patrons. If you want to become one of my patrons, there's a link down in the video description to become a patron. It's been delayed so long because I was looking for some better source for how the idea that economics isn't really based on rational choices has been addressed by economics over the years. And you'll notice, not on that, so over here I have this new book from Michael Lewis, which is kind of the way psychologists have given economists new tools to look at irrational choices, and I need to include that in the video. So that's why you'll notice over here there's this book to go along with this book about Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner, which is about economics being anti-feminist. I hope to finish that video before the end of the year. And if you want to become one of my patrons, like I said, and get a draft version of that video, there's a link down in the video description for that. Or if you want to just do a one-time support of my videos financially, over in this corner there's a little I if you live in one of the special 8 countries where you can give me YouTube fan funding. And I did make an edited produced video this last week, which a lot of people have asked me to do more, a Fox News bias video, which so far has gotten less views than these big long Liberal Viewer Sunday live clip roundup videos. So if you want me to do more shorter, edited, produced videos, then help me get videos like that one more views. It's only gotten like 2,000 views, but maybe over time it will get more. I don't know. You can, as always, let me know what you think down in the comment section. What you think about that, about anything I've said during the broadcast, or about any of the corporate news content I've shared with you, about the way I've picked out the clips, edited the clips. And like I said, I will be back next week on Christmas Day to give you another Liberal Viewer Sunday live clip roundup. And I guess until then, I will be seeing all of you around